Welcome to Season 3 of the Builders Podcast. I'm Matt Levenhagen. Here we share the journeys, strategies, and lessons that help entrepreneurs build what's next. Builders helping builders. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, we are joined by Gary Gitelson. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
So, Gary, you are the founder of Prohana, and we're going to be talking today all about relationships, and that's kind of your wheelhouse. You got a cool framework around that. But before we dive into stuff, why don't you just take a minute or two and just tell us a little bit about what you do at Prohana, or what's your whole thing?
Sure. So I've spent the last 28 years of my career as an engineer and then as an engineering leader. And throughout that time, the sort of theme that kept coming up is every time a new opportunity came to me or a transition or something, it's always been a small group of people that made all of that possible. And I kind of started out my career with that sort of intention of collecting a certain number of people without really realizing how important that was going to be. And now, as I've gotten, through most of my career, I've started realizing that that's been a bit of a superpower for me. And several of my colleagues and friends have kind of pointed out that they wish they were better at it. So now I'm kind of building a platform to help others to develop that same superpower and kind of a framework. How do you figure out who those people are? How do you keep them close to you? How do you stay top of mind? And all of the things that come from that, as you go through your career and build really strong, deep, committed relationships with a small number of key influential people.
Nice. Well said. So that's anyone in business or, life in general. I mean, relationships are everything, obviously, but, nurturing those relationships, especially in businesses, you might know hundreds of people, if not thousands. How do you do it in a way that's not overwhelming and actually has an impact on your life? This is a conversation I'm going to listen to really, really deeply and I'm going to be able to point to some things because there's the reason I've had certain successes or gone in certain directions in my life is people I know.
Yeah.
Or I called up or was on a phone call. Hey, we're doing this thing. You want to join us? That happened. And, but that's so cool. So with that, the first time we have somebody on the podcast, we like to learn a little bit about you. And actually, this probably be a good portion of this first episode. Maybe we'll have you back someday for more. I think we talked about after you launch the thing or go further into the thing, might have you back to see how that went. But right now, let's talk about your origin story, your journey, like how you ended up, you kind of touched on it a little bit, because relationships have been kind of this pattern, or you figured out that pattern through your life. But tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you ended up doing the amazing things you're doing in the world today.
Yeah. So, when I left university, I started my first job at Cisco. And even back then, I always had sort of entrepreneurial interests. So I kind of said my stated goal was to go to Cisco, spend a couple of years, meet the people I would co-found something with, and leave. So I always kind of started saying I wanted to meet a certain core group of people. And,
why did, if I may stop you already, why entrepreneurship? Why did you have that in you? Like, is that something that was instilled in you? Just you saw other people doing it, or?
I think there's something like, that resonates, especially with your podcast, about building something, owning something from the beginning. The idea of seeing an idea become reality is always kind of interesting. And even earlier than that, as early as high school, I've been an investor in, since I was 18, stocks, options, etc. And that was always supporting somebody building something. And now even, we'll talk later about the fact that even now I do angel and venture investing because I like being close to founders and being close to the people who are, conjuring something from nothing. There's,
I like that.
An energy about being able to have an idea in your head and see somebody resonate with that.
That is pretty cool. Done that a few times in my life, and it is. It's like you really are, when you think about it, you just evoke, like something just came out of nothing, out of your head. You had some idea and boom, here you are. Cool. All right, carry on.
So I started at Cisco and I said, within the, one of the people that's still in my circle now, 28 years later, was joined Cisco 2 weeks before me in the same group and is now an SVP there.
Mm.
But we've been friends for 28 years. I had the luck of meeting and working with Kirk Lockheed, who's Cisco employee number 5. And when you
Wow.
talk about entrepreneurs, somebody who can say that a part of the company was started on his credit cards, and learning how he built Cisco from nothing to where it is now, and learning, how he runs teams, builds engineering, organizations, comes up with technical ideas. The famous napkin design for BGP was his, in a conversation with somebody over a dinner, and now basically powers most of the internet now. So, you know,
Wow.
I was lucky in meeting the right kinds of people. Then I ended up spending way more time at Cisco than I intended. The dot-com bubble burst. I did my master's and Cisco paid for it. I met my wife and got married. The 2008 recession happened. But at some point, I'm like, okay, it is time to go do something else. I want to go find something closer to startup. If it's not going to be my own, it'll be a startup of some sort. I didn't want to do networking anymore. I wanted to do something totally different. If you
Mm.
know anything about, what recruiters do, lots of recruiters during that time were calling me and it's like, I can find you a job doing exactly what you're doing somewhere else. At the time, Arista
Wow.
was private and I had the opportunity to go work at Arista when they had 100 people. And a recruiter called me and I was like, if I wanted that job, I know 75 of those 100 people. I don't need you. But I
Mm.
didn't want that job. I wanted to do something different. And if you spend time on LinkedIn or any of these platforms, the recruiters will never call you for something different. And most of the time, even as a hiring manager, if I saw your story and you don't fit the mold, I don't talk to you. So making career changes is something that's very difficult. Domain changes, industry changes. It just so happened one of my coworkers and colleagues that I was friends with at Cisco became VP of engineering at a startup that was doing, in this case, camera technology for cell phones, consumer imaging. And he recruited me over. I went over there as an engineer, became director of engineering, eventually took his role as VP of engineering when he left and ran the entire engineering team.
Wow.
And then again, 2 years into that, one of the guys from that company left, started another startup, again, camera technology in a slightly different domain. I was first hire after the founders, VP of engineering, built the core technology stack, built the entire engineering team up to 35 or 40 people, got to set culture, got to be as close to a founder as possible. They would treat me as a founder, though I didn't necessarily feel that one was mine. It wasn't my idea. But I got the whole experience of building a team from scratch, building culture, nurturing people, hiring those first few folks. And again, even that, most of them were, the first 5 hires are people I knew. The first 30 hires were people they knew.
Mm.
It's very rarely did you actually just go out and do a cold resume review.
Interesting. Yeah.
Once you get past 30, 40, 50, you start having to bring in people. But, you know, it is much easier to build out your entire team with people you're comfortable with and you trust.
Yeah, you're kind of establishing that culture initially, and you all know each other, and yeah, it's there's
Yeah, a lot
something.
of unspoken language, a lot of unspoken things that just sort of come together because of the shared history, you
Right,
know?
right.
And then, unfortunately, at about the time that startup was winding down, my wife got sick, and we made the decision that I wasn't going to go get another job because I might have to start and then go on medical leave right away to take care of her. So I said, I'm going
Mm.
to take some time off. And instead, when we needed to be doing something, I'd go do contracting. I'd never set out to be a contractor. I'd never built a network for that. I didn't really like the sales and hustle of trying to figure that out. So I just reached out to that same group of people and said, this is my situation. Do you have something? And so many of them were so great about saying, yes, we will make something happen. And for 2 years, I never had a job, a day when I was wanted to be working that I wasn't. And then, when I finally went back into, sort of full career mode, I ended up getting a job at Google. Again, reference from a past, connection. That was right about the time the pandemic hit. I spent 2 years at Google during the pandemic. After that, I decided I didn't want to be there anymore. One of the people who I'd worked with and then worked for me briefly at Cisco was now a senior leader whose startup had been acquired by VMware. He recruited me into VMware to run a small sort of incubation team. Did that for the first year I was at VMware, and then he left and someone else took over all of our engineering team and said, "I'm only gonna take this role if Gary comes over and runs a part of that team." So I went from running an incubation team of 5 to running an engineering team of 150. Did that for 2 or 3 years, and then Broadcom, VMware got acquired by Broadcom. Broadcom was going to sell our division, and since I was one of the senior people, they kind of asked me, "Do you want to go along with the sale or not?" And I said no. And I took the option of being, voluntarily laid off. And that was July of last year. And then I took some time off to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I'd been talking to a bunch of people, and everyone's like, well, you got laid off. Are you worried about finding a new job? I was like, no. Why aren't you worried about finding a new job? In 28 years, I have never had that problem. I called people up and they hired me. But I had the same realization. A whole bunch of people got laid off at the same time, and they talked to me and they're like, well, and I said, okay, how can I help you? Go look at my LinkedIn. If there's anyone you want me to introduce, I will do a warm intro. And then I realized I have 1,500, 2,000 people in LinkedIn, and they would ask me, can you introduce me to that person? I'm like, I don't actually know that person. We met at a conference somewhere. You meet these people. Hey, we should be connected. You connect and you never talk to them again.
Right, right.
It was
Yeah.
like, I can make the intro, but they're not going to remember me. They're not going to care what I have to say, and they're not going to help you.
Mhm.
And that was kind of when I realized I was like, there is a thing to the 10 or 20 people that matter to me that I've spent years building relationships with, and I can call them tomorrow and get a job or manufacture a job, and the 2,000 people that are great for likes and comments on LinkedIn, but not super useful. So, and then I was talking to people and they're like, yeah, you're really good at that. I wish I was better. So now the question is, can I build a system to help those people be better? And is that
Yeah.
something that people are interested in? So after 4 or 5 months of, kicking around and figuring out and, relaxing and getting some time to really decompress and think about what I wanted to do, this was the opportunity to go build something. And that was a natural thing for me to build.
Whew. you you have a deep story, and there's so many. Like, I think we could have like 10 episodes. No. 'Cause I sit here, I'm like, I would love to learn more about how he built teams and they just all of that, like just building, becoming part of startups and building but um but that thread throughout, building relationships, that's at the core of it all. You only had those opportunities. You only did those things because of the people that you met. Well, how did this evolve though? Like in the early days, when did it dawn on you, or how, you know, I guess anybody's like, yeah, you build relationships with people, but what does that mean? You go have a beer with them? You
And
have
I
to
mean,
have something in common with them, or how does that work? How did that work for you?
it is a thing that's born out of transition. And even like I noticed at Cisco, it's useful over the course of 14 years that I was there, I was in 4 or 5 groups. So, you went from one role to another. And
Hmm.
again, even the very first one, I came straight out of college. I knew nothing. I met Kirk and employee number 5. This is somebody impressive. I want to get to know more about this. And about 6 or 9 months in, a project came up and I was sort of tangentially involved, and he asked me if I would help with it. I was like, when Cisco employee number 5 asks you to help, you do
Yeah.
it.
Well,
So,
but this is it. But there is a spark there like there's something, like obviously you were bringing something to the table. Like you had some skills, or your
yeah,
personality was such, your curiosity, something in he
yeah,
identified in you that he wants to work with you, and
yeah.
that's part of it too.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, I've kind of I have a little bit of a, I grew up in New York. I have a little bit of a snarky, cynical, sarcastic, kind of tone that, I've kind of said that, especially at Cisco, if you walked into a big company and you're in whatever building you're in, and you walk into the break room and you ask every person who walks in, who's the best person who works on this floor? 90% of them will give you one answer.
Hmm.
Everyone knows who the rock stars are.
Right,
And
right.
part of this is if you are one of those rock stars, how much value do you bring? You quickly learn, and I've done this mentoring people, that your value is to bring that out in other people.
Mm,
And if you're not one of those rock stars, your value should be to find and soak up as much of that from other people as you can. And like I said, I was very lucky to meet some obvious rock stars. And then the
yeah.
question is, what can I do to learn from them, to be educated by them? One of those stories, how do you identify the people that are going to be rock stars?
Mm,
One of the people that worked for me at Cisco early on in his career, he had come straight out of college, had been there a year, and sitting in a design meeting with someone, getting torn apart, and walked out of the meeting and turned to me and he's like, I don't know why he tore me apart so bad. I just think he was being mean. This was all just dumb. And I'm like, it may have been a little mean. Silicon Valley has that culture. The one thing I can say about that guy, he's not dumb. If he said something to you, there was something to that. Spend a little while and
right.
figure out what that was, and then go back and talk to him. And if that person had not taken that advice, that would have told me something about them. But they did, and we worked together a lot, and I've hired that guy twice since. So it's like
Yeah.
part of it is your personality. Are you naturally, I've always looked for intellectual curiosity. Are you the kind of person who wants to know why when something goes badly? Or are you blaming it on someone else or external factors or bad luck or what? If you're intellectually curious, as I've been a hiring manager, that's always been super interesting to me. Are you the kind of person who will find the answer, even if you don't know everything now?
Oh, that's pure entrepreneurship. Like you're solving problems. That's at the heart of it. And you're inquisitive and you want to get, yeah, I love that. Think of I don't know why there was a period in time about 15, 20 years ago for me that I had met this individual who we'd been at a couple seminars together. We got to know each other. We became friends. I was always, I think it was kind of that same thing. We shared this kind of, we were excited about what we were doing. We're in internet marketing, doing web stuff and all that stuff. And I think over time, and this kind of ties into this, we would touch base once in a while, even though when I kind of got out of internet marketing, I got into other stuff. We'd touch base. I mean, hey, what are you doing? What are you up to? And then suddenly there was an opportunity. And then it was like, and I was just always inquisitive, like, what are you guys doing? What do and I liked him a lot because he's smart. He worked for Fortune 500 companies. He's a software guy. He understands how to architect things and that's why he was successful. He works with this other individual that's brilliant in his own right. They were partners and they're like, we're building this thing and we need, we have the idea, but we don't have anyone to actually build it, like they needed a web developer and that was my thing. And we got to talking and I feel like that whole thing happened just because I was constantly like trying to actually tell me more, let's get on a meeting. Let's talk, what are you guys doing? Let me see if I can help you. And
And
the
and
rest
this
is
is the
history.
thing is like I've kind of noticed there's different personalities. And as I've been building Prohana, there's been this question of like, who are the right people who would want this? And there
Yeah.
are, I have friends of mine, my friend Zeev, I always comment, I'm like, if he walks into a party with 1,000 people, he walks out knowing 1,000 people. If I
Mm,
walk into a party with 1,000 people, I walk out knowing 3 people, but I know them
right.
really well because we'll have
Yeah.
spent 25, 30 minutes talking to the 1 or 2 people that I actually met.
Hmm.
So are you the kind of person who, when the transition happens, when you change groups or when they change groups, do you, a month later, do you go, I really enjoyed working with Mark. I wonder what he's up to. Let me reach out and see. If you're good about kind of circling back and checking in on those people, I mentioned, my friend Kevin that I met in the first 2 weeks at Cisco, and I've been with him, we only see each other about every 3 months now, but we'll go out for a beer or go to dinner and kind of say, what's been going on? What are you up to? What am I up to?
Yeah.
And we haven't worked together again, but since I started angel investing, he's invested with me in things. I send him stuff where somebody's got a company that's in his area and I'm like, I want to get your gut feedback on it. But it starts out from somebody you really enjoyed working with and had a personal connection with and want to see again. And then the reminder or that rhythm or that cadence of saying, we need to talk to each other every so often for that relationship to be warm. My brother is the opposite example. He worked for the same company for 24 years and then at one point got laid off. And we were talking on the phone and he was, he's telling me about it. I'm like, I worked for Cisco for 14 years. After a long time someplace, it's not just a job, it's an identity. So I get the idea that being laid off after all that time sucks.
Mm.
But I was like, they gave him a very generous severance package. You're going to spend time with your kids for a few months, and then you go figure out what's next. Not really that bad of a deal. And he's like, yeah, I'm a little worried about finding what's next. I was like, in 24 years, how many hundreds of people that you worked with, that you enjoyed working with, went other places? He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, hundreds. How many of them are you still in touch with? None. I'm like, well, that's your first problem. And that's why I said a lot of people will, in the moment, recognize a person. Somebody calls you for a reference. Would you hire this guy again? Oh, yeah, Mark's great. I'd love to work with him. Any chance I get, I would work with Mark. So how come you haven't talked to Mark in 10 years? You know, where was the interest in, if that person wasn't someone you want to spend time with that you didn't enjoy, then sure, let them go. But if they were smart, inquisitive, interesting, you want to work with them. If they have an opportunity, if they become the next, you know, whatever, Sam Altman, Dario, Elon, whatever, if they become that, the people they're going to think about and give those opportunities to are the people they talk to regularly who are top of mind. So if you want those opportunities to come to you, be top of mind in the people you think will bring them.
Yeah. Top of mind is so key. And it can be a simple thing, just sending somebody a quick message, text, whatever, what's going on? I haven't talked to you for a while. Just getting on those calls. Like I was just talking to like years later, we've gone different directions. He's doing his thing. We've worked together a number of times. I talked to him probably 4 or 5 months ago. We just got on. We were actually talking more about AI and stuff because he's in AI and this whole thing.
Yep.
Um, and but he's like, yeah, we're doing this. We're actually having this transition. We're thinking about. I would love to work with you again someday. And he's like, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, let me go build something with you again or whatever. And he's like, you were really good at running teams, building teams. I think that, that's where his mind. So he was telling me what his mindset was, but it's all of that. Like I can think of many other examples where we get on a call once in a while and it's almost like you're just kind of tracking what each other's doing. You have things in common. Like I said, we have interests in common, like the AI stuff, how many people can you get on a call with and just talk about AI more technical, what you're actually doing and building. Yeah, that's gold. And
Yeah.
it
And then
sounds like that's kind of what you figured out along the way is you, there's a lot of people out there that just do their work. They do their thing. They meet people, but they don't identify those people that they really have that connection with and then go through the effort of actually staying in touch with that person and building something deeper.
And part of it, I was lucky, again, it's if you're good in paying attention and learning from patterns, but also being exposed to things. Like I had an intuition early on the fact that there were, peers you wanted to stay in touch with. There were obviously managers or mentors you wanted to stay in touch with. But you also realize even people that, traditionally, people who worked for me, you know, one of the job that I got at VMware came from someone I would used to work with, then briefly worked for me, then I worked for him.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you can't get hung up on titles or position or relative, this person is below me. You never know where someone is going to go.
You never
And when I
know.
was at
Yeah.
Google as a manager, they had, things like 360 evaluation, which really teaches you get feedback and build relationships in every direction, above you, to the side of you, below you. When I interviewed at Google, they asked me, they're like, do you know anyone who's at Google now who can vouch for you? And I found the question really odd because I was like, I've been in the industry 20 years. If I don't know someone at Google, that should be your first red flag. And I kind
Yeah.
of, I stopped and I went, okay, what do you need? Here's someone I worked for. Here's someone who worked for me. Here's someone I worked with. Here's someone who's a partner from another company. Here's someone who was a customer. I was like, I could go down every relationship and find somebody. But, it's a question of would those people remember those relationships? Did I
Mm,
stay in touch with them? Are we still current? Are they willing to vouch for you? Because
true.
when someone gives you a reference, that's putting their reputation on the line for how good you are.
But Gary who? What?
Yeah.
What's that guy?
I mean, even when they're polite, if I have friends who are like, I'm at company X. If I want a job at company X and I go on LinkedIn and I go, oh, I remember that guy, and you send them an email, will you put my resume in? Sure, no problem. I will submit it in the portal. If you happen to get a job, I'm thrilled to take the referral bonus. But if the hiring manager calls them up and goes, what do you remember? The honest answer is not much. He was okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not actually helping you get that job, as opposed to somebody who going, total rock star, you're an idiot if you don't hire him. You know?
Love that. But it only happens if you've continued that relationship and you actually stay in touch with them.
Yeah.
So how do you so what are the kind of the mechanisms that you use to I mean, is it like how do you choose who to stay like you have we can talk a little bit about your framework, but like you had settled on kind of a number.
Yeah.
And I
And
believe that
that number comes from a certain reality in life. I mean, if your job is networking, if you are sales, BD, venture, whatever, if your job is to meet people, then yeah,
Mhm.
you can have 200 people in your network and you can meet them all the time. My job was managing teams and building products and engineering and software. So the people that I interacted with on a daily basis had wives and husbands and kids. And if I told my wife, I'm going to spend every day of every week going out to dinner and beer with my buddies, we wouldn't have been married for very long.
Right.
So the question was, if you need to see somebody about every 3 months before the relationship starts to be stale, and you can afford to do one thing a week, and maybe that one thing you brought two or three people together. I have drinks every week, now with two or three people, but it's like if you brought a few people together, it's 12 weeks. So that's 12 people, maybe a little bit if you happen to have, I'm going to have dinner tomorrow night with a group of four people that I knew from Cisco that all are in the same circle together. And we'll see each other every 3 or 4 months. But so maybe
Sure.
there's small groups. But if they're one on one meetings in 3 months, 10 to 12 is the maximum you're going to do before you burn out. So it wasn't like I wouldn't want to have more people in my circle, but that's the most I could do and stay mentally healthy myself. So that's
Right,
kind of
right,
where
right.
I am.
And those those 12 people, how do you develop that? I mean, are you just you have to find somebody that also wants to reciprocate. They also want to have a relationship with you as well.
Yeah.
Is there a personality traits that we're looking for, or is there something more scientific?
There's personality traits. There's, a lot of this is traditional relationship building. I have a
Mhm.
blog post on the love languages in networking. And, one of the ones, for me in particular, it always starts with, what can I do for you? If there's
Mm,
things that I can give you, then you're in a warm, a position to have a warm disposition to do things for me. You
yeah,
know, there are people who, when they were more junior to me, I helped as a mentor, I helped, build their career. As I watched them develop, you can kind of get a sense that these people are going to be amazing. I should try and stay in touch with them. And if you really did materially help them along the way and they like you, they're happy to stay in touch with you.
yeah.
There one story in particular, when I was at VMware, there was a woman who I thought was amazing. She was one of the best engineers I have ever seen. And at one point, she was, I had nominated her for promotion on a past occasion, and she didn't get it for political reasons. And then the next year came around, and I nominated her again, and her manager came to me and said, I saw that you nominated her. I said, yeah. And if you don't promote her, you're an idiot. And he said, I agree with you 100%. We have a problem. I said, what's the problem? He said, well, she's deciding if she wants to get that promotion or she wants to go into management. I said,
Mm,
okay. And she talked to the VP at the time. And then she came to me and she said, he told me I should talk to you. So I'm assuming he wants you to convince me not to go into management. And I was like, no, no, let's be honest. I am a super fan. I think you're amazing. I think you can do whatever you want. I will help you get whatever you want. So I'm not
mm,
here to convince you one way or the other. I have been a manager. I have been an individual contributor. I have gone back and forth between them. I'm here to tell you what it means to make one choice or the other. then you make a choice and I will get you whichever one you want. And we talked and she made her choice and she got what she wanted. And then when she left and went somewhere else, she reached out so we could continue that conversation and, have coffee, have drinks from time to time and maintain that relationship because she understood that I cared for her well-being. So she was
Right.
predisposed to do the same. And she will go off and be amazing. And if there's an opportunity that she thinks of me, I know that she'll bring it to me. So
Yeah,
part of it,
so
finding
that's
people that you can help, finding people, it's not about what they can do for you. If you're very transactional, that sort of poisons the well up front. So you want to
uh,
genuinely enjoy those people. You want to have great experiences and background in your, work with them, and you want to do what you can to help them. And that goodwill, karma, whatever, does come back to you.
yeah. Well, and that's the key, right? Is I love that. What can I do for you? What can I do for this person? And you're always, and you're in your everyday. Whether you're referring somebody or you're just talking to them about ideas, or just sometimes you're just a sounding board, but it's always like, well, what? How can I help this person?
Yeah, and you
Help
you
them.
have you just listed off 3 or 4 things, as part of what I was building, with Prohana was kind of like, can I build a deck of 100 activities. And depending on what your goal with that person is, here are 3 or 4 activities you might do, whether it's, you know, share an article, ask for feedback, pitch an idea, offer a job. What are things you can do? And, some of them are asks and some of them are gives. So there's
Hmm.
also a sort of scorecard in your relationship over time. Are you more giving than receiving? And
Yeah.
some subtle, uh, you know, nudges towards one side of that I have an opinion makes the relationship better.
Yeah. And sometimes it's difficult because sometimes it can be one-sided where I've received, like, for a while I'll start receiving all kinds of referrals from somebody, and or we're just a lot of engagement, top of mind stuff, but I'm like, I just can't find anything to give that other person. Like, I feel bad. They've sent like 5 people, 10 people to me, and I'm like, I'm not working with anybody right now that could use their services.
But I mean,
But
even that's a starter of a conversation. Go
yeah,
say, we should go get together. And when you get together, you go, look, I feel amazingly blessed that you've done all of this for me. And I really feel like I should be returning the favor. Is there anything I can do for you? Is it,
yeah.
do you need help, advice, work, people? Is there anything I can do? And just let them know that you had that thought. Because
Hmm.
again, if they need something, they will think to ask you because they know you're open to it. And
Right.
again, it puts that seed in their mind. It will cause, again, they'll feel good about the fact that you asked. They'll continue to do things for you. And if they do have something, they will give you the opportunity to do something for them.
And it doesn't also have to be like a one-to-one, like
Yeah, it's not
it could be
transactional
different
at all.
things. Yeah, right. It's not transactional, but it also could, maybe that's their thing, is the referrals to you, but maybe you help them in some other way.
Yeah,
Maybe
I mean,
just talking to them is valuable.
yeah, and it is even referrals. Like I said, I've had people refer people to me. I've had people refer investments to me. I've had people, ask for feedback on projects. I've, had people refer jobs to me. They're advisory roles. They're, as you get further in your career, the especially in engineering, the magic of engineering, like this, the senior engineer, the gift they have is pattern recognition. They've
Uh-huh.
seen everything. So,
Mm,
that this kind of like, what does this problem look like to you? And have you solved it something similar, or do you know someone who solved something similar? So
right,
just
right.
talking through problems, even if you don't have an answer, just being a sounding board. I've come up with great ideas talking to someone, and all they were doing is, yeah, 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 and asking me clarifying questions and helping me to see my own thought process. So just
Yeah,
having a conversation, even if they don't know what they did, they can be tremendously helpful.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Gosh, so many, thoughts of things that have played out. What I'm doing, like, I'm thinking, like, just a recent thing where it was that we get on a call once in a while, with a friend of mine. who I at one time was underneath. He was
Yep.
a CEO, and I was reporting to him and building stuff. And then we left that company. We're still in touch, but we were just talking, and I think one of the things too, and I think this is probably really important, is you're always sharing what you're doing. Because if you don't share what you're doing, your relationships or the people you're talking to don't know what you're doing, and they're not going to necessarily ask you. So always like, what are you up to? And he knew I was like into doing more stuff with AI and whatever. We're doing a project together now because of that. Because we started. I was sharing what I was doing. He's doing his thing. He's launching this thing. He's like, there's a component that he's like, wait. I'm like, we could do this. I could build that for you. And it
Yep.
just came out of conversations, multiple conversations, and just sharing. And I think that's beautiful. Another one I was thinking of was I had another guy, we talked about working for people that are like, you're the boss and they're the whatever. I had a situation where I was working for a company for like 3, 4. It was like one of the few times in my life I worked for somebody else since I was young. But I worked for a company as a web developer for like 3 years, and I built a team there. And one of the team members, after I left there and they had left, I actually fired them, which is even better. I had to fire the whole team. Anyway, but one day I get a message on LinkedIn, hey, I got this client. I don't have time to help them. And so he referred this client to me, which turns out to be, I still have that client 5, 6 years later, one of our biggest accounts. But it came from this guy that worked for me at this company, and we just stayed in touch, kept like, what are you guys doing? Other things, like similar things. When I left that company, the first thing I did was reach out to this guy that worked for me there as well. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm working for this company. Great. I can help you with that.
I mean,
It's a
like I
beautiful
said,
thing.
people that even, as I said, you need to look in all directions, because I've definitely at least a half dozen times had people that worked for me who went somewhere else and then said, my company's looking for a VP. I enjoyed working with you. Will you come here and be my boss again?
Yeah.
It's like,
Right. Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome.
this is, it's one
Yeah.
of those things. I've had opportunities to go places, and that's a good feeling for somebody to say, I would like to work for you again.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
and
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, you're like the ideal boss.
like, I did that well, if they want to work for me again.
Oh,
That makes me feel good, you know?
yeah, it's funny. I had one when I worked for that company, we left, and then the guy I reached out to, he was doing freelancing again, and he's like, I'm working with this company and I need help with it. This company is actually, when I was working for you and you fired me, because I fired him too.
You have a pattern.
I, he said, I was a reference. So I had actually talked to this company and was a reference for him. And so he got the work. And then when I left that company, I ended up doing work for the same company that I
Yeah,
was. It's just wild. But all that happens is because you stay, like, even though I still had a good relationship with those people, they understood that it came from higher above, that I had to get rid of them, and I
and
left, but
this is,
it was
again,
all good.
true. That was one of those things you learn very quickly if you understand networking, that leave, even under bad circumstances, leave a good impression.
Yeah.
The world is a very, very, very small place,
Yeah.
and you will run into those people again, and it's important to keep the people you want close, but it's also important not to make enemies, because those people end up way closer than you
Right.
think. You
Yeah.
know?
Right. True. True. Well, it's a long game, right? I mean, that's kind of the key with it's kind of networking 101. It's like, I may not do something with you today or for you today, or it might be 3 years down the road or 5 years. It's a long
Yeah.
game. So what else can you tell us about? So you settled on 15, right? Or 12, 10 to
It's
12,
10 to
15,
20 is kind of,
10 to 20.
in the platform, it says no more than 20. And again, I've had that conversation. When I talk to an engineer or a manager, they will struggle to figure out who the 15 are.
Right.
When you talk to someone in venture or marketing or sales, they'll go, I need 200. So there's
Yeah.
definitely distinct classes of users, but within the people that I built it for, that are like me, 20 is probably the upper. Most people will be in the 10 to 15 range.
So how do you, are you already helping people, or are you have people going through this with you, or you're helping advise them or whatever, however
I
you're,
launched a closed small beta of 10 or 12 people, about a week ago. And
okay.
I'm sort
Wow.
of getting the feedback from them now. And it's one of those things, like, as a builder, things you learn. The problem resonates with everyone. When I tell them what I'm doing, everyone's like, yeah, 100%, we need that. The solution, everyone has in their head a different idea of what it means to solve that problem.
Mm,
So the first incarnation of it when I was thinking about it was more of a dashboard, more of a personal CRM. And I thought about that and I'm like, it's interesting, but it's not particularly interactive. It's not proactive. It's if I go back there, it will help me figure it out. But if I'm not the kind of person who goes there, it doesn't matter.
mm,
So I moved towards, I'm a runner and I started using some of the personal trainer apps, Strava, Runna, those kinds of things. And I was like, it's not that I don't know how to run left foot, right foot, repeat, not hard. But it is something about the accountability of someone building you a program, suggesting things, giving you structure, keeping
right.
track of your progress and context and things like that. So the current incarnation looks a little bit like a personal trainer. And I'm kind of waiting to see how that resonates with people. And the big lift so far, everyone has their feedback of, how hard is it to onboard? How do I figure out who my 15 people are? How do I get them into the system? Can you help me figure them out? Can I just show you my LinkedIn? Can I just show you my Gmail? What can I do so that 90 seconds from now I have the first connection and I'm doing something? And some of the people are like, yeah, I know who my first 3 or 4 is. I put them in and it's good. Others are overwhelmed by the challenge of it. So I'm getting a lot of conflicting feedback now, which is good. And I'll sort through it and see what needs to be adjusted and what to do. And that's the process of building. And I'll probably spend the next few months just
Yeah.
iterating and adding a few people every week and seeing what people tell me and tweaking this and tweaking that and seeing what works. And there are competitors. you know, Dex is very much like a CRM and just says import your whole LinkedIn and we'll sort it out from there. Happenstance is a giant search engine and says, you can give me a text description of who you're looking for and I'll go find them. But for me, like, my opinion on this is on LinkedIn, I can go find anybody, but I'm second level connected to 2 million people who don't care about me. So the
Right.
fact that Happenstance will have 10 million people for me to find doesn't mean I can reach them. I can find them, but I can't connect. And my argument is if I have 20 people and you have 20 people, that's 400 people who, if one of them wants to meet the other, they can ask you and you will talk to me and we'll take that call will get taken seriously. If I say Matt's looking for something and you should talk to him because Matt and I go way back and this is a conversation worth having, someone in my network will take that call. And that's not what I see in LinkedIn. Or, the other thing, like there's a bunch, you talk about AI. There's a
Mhm.
bunch of AI that I can apply to the problem. I can use AI to look at the transcript from your last call and say, okay, this is what you talked about. This is what you should follow up on. Here's an article you saw that you should share. Here's, context between about your relationship. That's a useful way for AI. There's companies like Bordy and Jack and Jill for recruiting. It's like, I know a million people. I know a million jobs. I can get you where you need to be. But as a hiring manager, if an AI said, I know Matt and Matt's amazing, an AI doesn't really know Matt in any setting. And an AI telling me that Matt is amazing isn't terribly meaningful. So as a hiring manager, I don't believe that an AI warm intro is a thing. you
Right.
know, and Bordy's another one that's, they started out with, this AI meets people and pitched its own funding round and raised $8 million. And that's a great story. But I wouldn't be surprised if most of the VCs that took that call just wanted to be able to tell a story at parties about how they funded an AI that pitched them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's novel,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure that that's signal. And I think
Yeah.
that part of what you need, you use the AI for data mining and context and summary and analysis, and then you connect with people one on one.
Mm. Oh, interesting. I love how you're like the messy part of building where in the beginning where you have this idea and it's in the incubator. You're thinking about it, like, how am I going to do it? And then like you put it in people's kind of quote unquote people's hands and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Let me try to help you. And then getting that feedback. That's an exciting part of the business because what it might end up being is something completely different than you
Oh
would,
yeah.
or something you wouldn't even have imagined.
I'm also,
And
I mean, it'll pivot as many times as it needs to resonate with
yeah.
the crowd and the mission, but it's also a learning. Like I have built things. Building the system was super easy.
Mhm.
Building the company, building marketing, building social presence, building messaging. These are things I don't do. And
No.
learning how to do those is, again, I can go reach out to my network and ask people, I have friends who are designers who are helping me make it not AI ugly, who are, it's like, I could get it to work. But even I looked at it and went, yeah, that's ugly. But I don't even know the language of how to say what to do to make it better.
That's the
So
beautiful thing about business, though. It's like people don't appreciate all the different hats and different things you need to actually do to launch. It's not you can have an idea, but to actually bring it to market or to get validate that idea, all the things that's involved. That's what makes it fun and
yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
Well, I'm
And yeah,
excited. I'm excited for you. And like, I feel like we could dig even deeper into what we're talking about here, but also I'm super interested in obviously the building of the thing. And we talked about like, you coming back someday. And once I could see us talking another 6 months or a year or something and be like, okay, so Gary, how'd it go? What did you actually build?
yeah, yeah.
And what that experience was like.
Yeah, and I mean, that is, nowadays, that experience, like I said, the experience of building in 3 dimensions, the skills that I need to make this real, the
Hmm.
idea as it evolves and pivots into what it is. And now, I've gotten as far as I have for, in 4 or 5 months of building because of the technology and the point in time in which we're at. It is
Yeah,
easier to do this from the mechanical perspective than it ever has been. And all
for
three of
sure.
those are interesting sort of builder journeys to dig deeper into.
But yeah, and we can land on this like that a real big lesson here in what you're doing and how you're approaching it and what's going on with you is that you don't have to. You can have an idea, but you don't have to have it completely fleshed out and like completely mapped out and have a business plan and know exactly what you're building before you start building, before you start doing it. Just
I
you
mean,
get an idea, you get it in a good place, like, okay, let's just start doing this thing. Let's throw it out there.
if anything, the biggest lesson of the last 3 or 4 months was I had a pretty strong opinion of what I thought it would be. And the most important thing is to not get attached to that idea
Yeah.
because I have lots of ideas and many of them are wrong.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Welcome to entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gary, thanks for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. If somebody wants to learn more about what you're doing or like reach out, and where do you hang out on the World Wide Web?
Yeah, you can always follow me or message me on LinkedIn, and I get back to everybody there. Um, and everyone can take a look at Prohana.ai. There's a great blog section where I've been writing, articles that sort of talk about the idea and my perspective on networking, and kind of I've been building, all of the thought process behind it in public. And then, you can always sign up, to be on the waiting list for the beta and for the launch. So
Love it. All
Prohana.ai.
right. Well, thank you very much, Gary. Until next time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Builders Podcast. One more quick note about our sponsors. At Unified Web Design, we're passionate about doing better together, partnering with agencies and businesses to deliver exceptional web design, development, and ongoing support. And UnifiedLabs.ai is where we explore smart, practical ways to integrate AI directly into your website and e-commerce flows. From intelligent chatbots to marketing automation to back-end reporting, all with a strong focus on user experience and making your systems work smarter. If you haven't already, subscribe or follow to stay updated on future episodes. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, sharing it with someone who might benefit helps us grow this amazing community. Until next time, keep building smarter, bolder, and with purpose.